Futurama is brought to you by
Squarespace. There is seriously no easier way to build your own website than with Squarespace. Dr. John Zoidberg, everyone's favorite disgusting, slimy, desperate, incompetent package delivery company doctor. I don't think anybody is surprised when I use those words to describe Zoidberg. That's how he's generally perceived, right? By both the audience and his colleagues at Planet Express. But honestly, when you look past Zoidberg's inherently pathetic qualities and peer closer into his intentions and his actions, you might be surprised to find that Zoidberg is actually maybe the best person on the Planet Express crew. Like, on a fundamental level, Zoidberg is actually an incredibly good person, and I feel like that does not get talked about enough. So today, let's examine and challenge our perceptions of Zoidberg and why he absolutely deserved the happy ending that the show gave him. But first, today's video is brought to you by Squarespace.
Whee! We're online!
Squarespace is the all-in-one platform to build your online presence or run your business. It's seriously so user-friendly. I sat down and threw together this really nice-looking website in a single afternoon, and it's ridiculously customizable. Check it out, I made a website that still matches the aesthetic of my brand and YouTube channel, highlighting some of my favorite video essays I've worked on, as well as some of the recent productions I've worked on professionally. Head over to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to push that website public, use my link, squarespace.com/Johnny2Cellos, to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Alright, let's get back to Futurama. Early on in the series, Futurama really played up Zoidberg's incompetence. His introduction is honestly one of the funniest of any character in the series.
Now open your mouth and let's have a look at that brain. No, not that mouth.
I only have one.
Really?
In addition to the incompetence factor, they also really played up his desperation and pathetic nature. This was the primary Zoidberg gag throughout the series, I'd say. The first to really dig into this in a meaningful way was Why Must I Be a Crustacean in Love? We basically learned that Zoidberg isn't just perceived as pathetic on Earth, but on his home planet Decapod 10 as well. When Zoidberg returns home for the Decapodian mating ritual, he's basically ignored and humiliated as nobody shows any interest in him as a mating partner. In fact, the one person he does talk to, his childhood crush Edna, says some pretty harsh things to him.
I'm sorry, Zoidberg. You're just an inferior male specimen.
And this started to highlight a pattern we would see when learning about Zoidberg's history and how it shaped his own insecurities. We learned in A Taste of Freedom that one of the reasons he came to Earth in the first place was for the freedom to pursue his dreams without judgment.
Sure, you can be a comedian instead of a doctor. If you want your parents to roll over in their graves.
This was an attitude he was met with at nearly every turn on Decapod 10.
Sure, you can go to medical school if you've given up on your dream of being a comedian.
So we know that all of his hopes and dreams were met with resistance, and he was perceived as a huge loser by his fellow Decapodians, which all leads to something else that we know Zoidberg seeks desperately: acceptance. Zoidberg's entire reason to come to Earth was in hope that he could live his life the way he wanted to, and be accepted for doing so.
That's why I love Earth. You can do what you want, and no one makes you feel guilty because no one cares.
In addition to this, one of the other things we see him constantly seek, which pairs with acceptance, is friendship and companionship. It's not just that he wants people to accept his decisions and lifestyle, he wants to form connections to those people as well. This is pretty clear in his actions throughout the series. In The Prisoner of Benda, Zoidberg relishes being in Fry's body because Fry actually has friends he can spend time with.
Aha! The guy in this body has a friend. Bender, old pal, it's me, the Fry.
Pretty simple, but fitting for Zoidberg. In the episode 300 Big Boys, Zoidberg expects that his $300 from the government will now put him on a level playing field as everyone else. He tries to do rich people things, hoping that it will afford him a connection to people that were previously inaccessible to him. Of course, we know this wasn't going to pan out for him.
One art, please.
What a clever impersonation of a stupid, poor person.
Thanks to some flashback episodes in the revival seasons, we see that he wasn't always so inept at forming these connections, though. We learn in Mobius Dick that in the early years of Planet Express, Zoidberg actually was very well liked by his crewmates.
Whoa!
You totally got me, Dr. John. You're hilarious.
Though obviously after this crew didn't return, this wasn't the case anymore. In fact, Zoidberg's search for friendship is brought to the forefront of the episode Tip of the Zoidberg.
We hate you and we never want to see you again.
But Friends.
We're not your friends!
It also highlights Zoidberg's generally good-hearted nature through flashbacks. We learn that Zoidberg and Farnsworth actually met while working for Mom. Not only this, but the entire reason that Zoidberg worked for the professor at Planet Express was because of a promise he kept to the professor. While on their mission, the professor was infected with hypermalaria, and Zoidberg promised him he would put the professor out of his misery if the symptoms of hypermalaria ever presented themselves. So when those symptoms start up, Zoidberg has to do the most difficult thing, kill the professor, which of course leads to the Planet Express crew shunning him, thinking he's a literal murderer. But this episode highlights something that far too often gets overlooked when it comes to Zoidberg. We learn that Zoidberg basically gave up a life of success working for Mom just to keep his promise to the professor.
He saved my life.
No big deal. You could have been rich if you'd stayed.
Zoidberg could have had everything he always wanted, but he instead did what was best for his friend. And this is actually not the only time we've seen this from Zoidberg. It's pretty consistent throughout the series. In That's Lobster-Tainment, when Zoidberg is being threatened by Calculon, instead of rigging the Oscars in Calculon's favor, he gives the award to his uncle, Harold Zoid. He risks his own safety for the happiness of someone he cares about. In 300 Big Boys, after Zoidberg has been humiliated by Mom and the other rich folks at this fancy art gallery, he decided to use his $300 refund to buy food for the homeless folks who didn't have anything to eat. Instead of trying to buy his way into a fancier lifestyle to connect with rich people, he uses the little he does have to help provide for the less fortunate.
I finally figured out how money could make me happy. By using it to buy my hungry friends a feast.
In A Taste of Freedom, even though Zoidberg has spent his entire life singing the praises of Earth and the freedom it affords, the entire planet turns on him for using that freedom to eat the flag.
Don't mess with Earth. Kill Zoidberg!
He has to flee to the Decapodian embassy because he's convicted in a court of law, but despite this fact, Zoidberg chooses to save Earth and his friends from the Decapodian wrath because guess what? He pretty much always does the right thing. Even though he had been shunned and convicted, he stood up for Earth and its freedom. In almost every situation, even to his own detriment, Zoidberg is willing to do the thing that's right. He sacrifices his own happiness and well-being for the sake of the people he cares about. I really think you might be able to make the argument that of all of the members of the Planet Express crew, Zoidberg might be the best person in the bunch, which is why I think it's so great that the writers decided to give him such a quality finale in the episode Stench and Stenchability, the second to last episode of the series. Next to the focus on Fry and Leela's relationship, and meanwhile, they decided that the most important thing to wrap up was that Zoidberg finally gets his happy ending, and I love that for him. So let's talk about why Stench and Stenchability is not only a great episode, but a story that both perfectly encapsulates everything that makes Zoidberg a good character, while simultaneously giving him that happy ending he deserves. Stench and Stenchability both plays off of all of the audience and characters' perceptions of Zoidberg, while also showcasing all of the traits I previously mentioned that make him a great person. We learn early in the episode that Zoidberg is about to meet a woman he's been online dating for 4 years, so this basically establishes that these characters know each other really well. This isn't just someone who Zoidberg is now meeting for the first time. They've had a strong 4-year-long relationship building, but the moment that she arrives to spend time with Zoidberg, his horrendous stench drives her away. Like, immediately. She throws away 4 years worth of buildup because he smells that bad. Now I know that Zoidberg being this stinky wasn't really established earlier in the series, but I don't think that really matters. Zoidberg is seen as a pretty gross by the other characters, and so focusing in on the stench works great for the story they're telling with this episode. So already we've got to feel really awful for Zoidberg, who has to be heartbroken after his new relationship immediately sinks. But then Zoidberg meets Marianne, a beautiful flower girl who has no sense of smell. She actually finds Zoidberg incredibly charming, and because she can't smell his awful stench, she isn't driven away immediately.
My name's Marianne.
Hello, you.
Zoidberg finally gets to connect with someone. It's a genuine connection and romance that's incredibly cute. But Marianne also laments the fact that she can't smell anything, as she is a flower girl after all, and this is where the conflict of the episode lies. Zoidberg has the skills to give Marianne a nose transplant and actually give her the ability to smell, but he's terrified of doing so because it would mean she could smell him and would likely leave him. This truly could not have been a more perfect conflict for Zoidberg's finale. It focuses on both Zoidberg's long-standing desire for connection and romance, and that inherent goodness that drives him to always do the right thing. Zoidberg cannot bring himself to lie to Marianne, and even though he fully believes that it means the end of his relationship and happiness, he offers to give her the procedure to restore her smell. God, Zoidberg's a good guy, y'all. But since this is in fact Zoidberg's finale, he finally gets the happy ending. Marianne wakes up from her surgery, and as it turns out, she hates the smell of flowers, but loves the smell of Zoidberg.
You smell just like I dreamed you would.
Zoidberg's good-hearted nature is finally rewarded with that companionship and romance he's been seeking for the entire show. Honestly, it's funny, when I started researching this video, my thought was, oh, it's gonna be so much fun to talk about how pathetic Zoidberg is. But as I watched through the episodes that focus on him in succession, you recognize these other patterns that aren't showcased in all of his other appearances. His good nature really comes to the forefront when he's the focus of the story, and it's clear that despite his desperation and the grosser aspects of his alien anatomy, Zoidberg is possibly the best actual person in Futurama. His heart and care for others always shines through in his episodes, and while some people might not like that he got a happy ending, since it kinda contradicts his pathetic nature, I think he's probably the most deserving of that happy ending out of anyone else in the show. So, here's to Zoidberg.
But I like the way you smell, because I like you.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to another Futurama breakdown. Let me know below in the comments if you feel the same way about Zoidberg as I do. And if you like this one, do me a favor, check out some of my other Futurama videos, or just comment or like or subscribe, or you know the drill by now. Peace.
Johnny! Choo-choo!